Game week 38 is the final game week for us to buy players to hopefully give us our best ever ranks. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the top transfers going into this week alongside some of those punts that might help you win those mini leagues if you are chasing somebody down. So as always, if you are looking forward to today's video, make sure you drop a like and of course hit that subscribe button. I know it's the end of the season, but it's always massively appreciated. Enough waffling, let's get into today's video. Now first up, I want to talk about the best defenders for the final game week of the season. Now I know it doesn't sound very glamorous. I think everybody wants to make forward and midfield transfers, but I also think there's a lot of managers out there that look at their midfielders, look at their front three and say to themselves, the team's actually looking pretty good. And also I know quite a few people have double Man City defence away against Fulham, for example, and it might not look the most glamorous. Well, I think these three options here could actually have real high upside. And that's going to include Newcastle's Livramento, Bournemouth's Kirkes and Arsenal's Ben White. Now, I want to talk through first and foremost the fixtures, and that's going to be the kind of theme throughout all of these sections because underlying stats are great, but when we're in the final game week of the season, fixture and context around the team and the player is the most important thing. I really do believe that for a one game week punt. So when we're looking at Livramento first and foremost, we can see here that they have a home game against Everton. Now, the context is that Newcastle have to win this game, and Everton have just come off the back of their final home game at Goodison Park. It feels like a perfect storm here where Newcastle are completely motivated, and you would argue Everton could be on the beach and nobody really would blame them with nothing to play for. So I think this is a fantastic opportunity for a clean sheet, and I've mentioned it here. I believe this is a must-win for Newcastle, we all know that, and I do think a clean sheet is probably one of the highest of all of the teams based on the context of what we're seeing. The only downside with Livramento, even though he is 4.6 million, is that he's only had one assist all season, so I don't look at him and think that he has the potential for maybe two assists, maybe a goal across the way. So I do think you're bringing him in for maybe the odd bonus point in the clean sheet, but I think in terms of clean sheet odds, these are going to be as high as you might get. Now, the other one that I think is right up there is going to be Kirkes, 5.2 million. Now, we know there's a lot of rumours of him moving to Liverpool in the summer, but I don't think it will impact his minutes in this game. Now, in terms of the fixture, I think it's one of the standouts. Leicester at home, they have just had their final home game as well, so they're not going to want to go away to Bournemouth, and it's Bournemouth's final home game of the season. I think they're going to want to finish the season strong after what you probably argue is a bit of a disappointing second half of the season. Now, with someone like Kirkes, I really do believe that he is a high upside pick. I think the clean sheet odds are fantastic against Leicester. Whereas Livramento doesn't necessarily offer anything in the final third, Kirkes has 2 goals and 6 assists to his name this season. So I really think he is a bit more of a well-rounded option than that of Livramento. But the only problem is, and this is where maybe Newcastle are a slight preference, is that we don't have any sort of context in this game. Bournemouth aren't really playing for anything. Yes, I mentioned they want to finish the season strong, but they also wouldn't be surprised if they just rock up and just put in a fun game for the fans. So there's not really any context to this game, which is my only problem with Kirkes. And finally, we've got Ben White at 6.1 million. It's definitely the only time I've included Ben White in a video this season. It's a real shame because he was a fantastic option last season. Now, he has guaranteed minutes going into this game week, I'm certain of it, because Saliba has been ruled out and Timber has been ruled out for surgery. So Ben White, I believe, is going to come in alongside Kiwior and Calafiori, and we'll probably see either Zinchenko or Lewis Skelly playing at left back. And the fixture, as we know, is great, away against Southampton. Again, the problem is, neither team have anything to play for. Could we see a weakened Arsenal team where Arteta maybe gives some minutes to those players that unfortunately couldn't give across the course of the season? Jorginho maybe in centre mid. Could we see some rotated front three? And that might just naturally hinder Arsenal as a team for the final game week. That is my big issue with Arsenal, is that I don't know exactly what I'm getting, but at 3% owned, if you've lost someone like Saliba or Timber in your FPL teams and you want a piece of Arsenal, I would just go to Ben White and hope that you do get that rare attacking return that he might offer. So if I was picking one right now, I do believe Kirkes is the standout pick for clean sheet odds and attacking potential, but I also think Livramento is a safe bet for the clean sheet, just based on what we mentioned. I can't see a world where Newcastle at home, who have to win that game, don't do so, and by all means I think they could do it by a goal to nil. So Kirkes is my number 1 pick, Livramento 2 and Ben White 3, but let me know your picks in the comment section. Moving into some of the popular Game Week 38 midfielders, and it's worth noting at the end of this video I will be covering off some differential picks that we can go for, but I do believe these 3 are, rightly so, some of the popular picks that managers are going for. So we've got to talk about why that is the case and whether we should actually be buying them. So the 3 that we're looking at right now is going to be Newcastle's Gordon, West Ham's Jarrod Bowen, and of course Arsenal's Bukayo Saka. Now again, I'm not looking at underlying numbers. It's a 1 game week punt. We want to look at fixture, context, and then we'll come to some sort of conclusion on which player that we should buy. So we've spoken about both Newcastle and Arsenal already. Newcastle have a must-win game, and in terms of Gordon, he is now back in this Newcastle team. He started the last 2 games. We always knew he was the main man in this Eddie Howe team on that left-hand side, and it has come to fruition now. So I'm absolutely expecting Gordon to have guaranteed game time in this must-win game, especially if Alexander Isak is going to be ruled out. And that is the big context for this game. We know it's a must-win for Newcastle. We know it is a great fixture, but if Alexander Isak is out of the team and Callum Wilson has to play as a forward, is that going to hinder Newcastle as a general team? Or is it going to play in Anthony Gordon's favour, because he most likely will be on penalties, possibly, and also he will have to be the big dog in this particular fixture. And I actually thought Newcastle done okay in their fixture previously against Arsenal in the league. Even though they did lose that game, I saw enough in the attacking areas to think that they can actually score goals in this Everton game if Alexander Isak is ruled out. But I understand why some people might be a little bit cautious to go to Gordon if Isak is ruled out. What you do need to know, though, he's 8% owned. And I think in terms of pedigree, I can trust Anthony Gordon in the sort of fixture like this to deliver an attacker return, but maybe I have some false hope on him. Now, in terms of Jarrod Bowen, this is a really interesting one because, again, context, nothing to play for either team. Ipswich are down, but it is their final home game. West Ham have nothing to play for. But I would make the argument that Graham Potter is very much in the case of Vitor Pereira at Wolves, where he still has to get this squad trusting him as a manager. So I think West Ham are still going to put out a strong team for the final game of the season. I mean, Potter's ruthless. He didn't even play Fabianski in his final home game of the season. So I think he's still trying to finish his season strong. And the big thing about West Ham is that even though we can't trust the team right now, we can trust Jarrod Bowen. 6 returns now in the last 5 games, and that has been while West Ham have been kind of stuttering along and not really producing fantastic football. And I do think it is a great fixture. I would say Bowen's quite the boring, safe move, but I totally understand why managers are going there, and I do think he's a standout pick this week, but I don't see West Ham scoring 3-4 goals in this particular fixture. Maybe I'm on my own there. Finally, Bukayo Saka. And this is one everybody's talking about right now because I think everybody is split on him. Either everybody thinks he's the best pick ever, or managers are concerned about what we've seen over the last month and what we're seeing from Arsenal. So, spoke about Arsenal. Context-wise, not really anything to play for, but maybe Arteta does just want to finish the season strong. And if he does put out a strong team, Southampton away is just a fantastic fixture. And even though Arsenal have been a bit unpredictable, and Southampton, of course, have kept Man City to a 0-0 draw, I do think Arsenal, if they put out a strong team, will score 2, 3, 4 goals in this fixture. Maybe I'm being a little bit optimistic there. Now, the fixture is great, but I don't have much else to say about Saka. No attacking return in the last 7 league matches. And as I mentioned here, there is a chance of rotation. Could we possibly see Saka play 60 and then Ethan Nwaneri come on the right-hand side? Or does he just give Saka a complete rest? We don't really know. The big thing, of course, is that all the teams kick off at the same time. And if we do get some sort of Arsenal leak and a Saka starting, I just think it's going to be almost impossible for us to ignore Bukayo Saka as a pick. He's on set pieces, he's on penalties, and we know what he can do in basically any fixture, even though we haven't seen it over the last month. So, for me, I do feel like Saka is rightly still the top pick. I do expect him to start. Otherwise, if I was going a bit different, I probably would go for Anthony Gordon and hope that he does step up in this must-win game for Newcastle. Could I see West Ham rock up against Ipswich and just put in a really below par performance? I could, but I also could see BOWEN scoring at any moment. So if I had to rank these right now, it would be Bukayo Saka number 1. I know it's a bit boring. I'd probably put Gordon number 2 and Jarrod Bowen number 3. But I understand why Jarrod Bowen is being so highly bought, and I still think he could easily be the highest scoring player of these 3. Let me know your pick in the comments. Now take a look at the Game Week 38 forwards. Similar to the midfielders, where I think there's a core group of players that people are going to, I think the same applies to the forwards, and that's what it's like in a 1 game week punt. Naturally, we are attracted to the great fixtures and the players that have the highest upside. It's just how it is. But the 3 that we're looking at right now are going to include Evan Nielsen at Bournemouth, Arsenal's Havertz, who's back on the menu, and Aston Villa's Ollie Watkins. And again, we're just focusing on context and fixtures here. So we spoke about Arsenal. I'm not going to talk about them as a context fixture. In terms of Bournemouth and Evan Nielsen, we spoke about Kirkes previously. I think, I can't absolutely guarantee a great Bournemouth performance, but what I think will happen in this game is goals. I do look at this Bournemouth team and think there are goals in this team regardless of what the fixture is. We saw that against Man City. I know they didn't necessarily score a hatful of goals, but I think they had chances and they created problems at times against a team who had to win that game. Now you put it up against a team who have nothing to play for in Leicester. I think the floodgates could open in this fixture. So I think Evan Nielsen is a fantastic pick. Now we do occasionally see some early substitutions from him, so don't be expecting the full 90 minutes, but even though he's one of the most bought forwards going into Game Week 38, he's still only 4% owned with such an incredible fixture. Now, yes, I'm expecting that to maybe double by the time we get to the Game Week 38 deadline, but I will say this. If you're seeing a lot of people buying Evan Nielsen, just note that this isn't going to be a player come the Game Week 38 deadline that's sat there at 50, 60, 70% owned. Yes, he is being bought by a lot of people in the 38, but he still will be less than 10% owned, and don't be put off by that at all. Some of the players we're talking about today are over 10% owned, and they're still great differentials. And Kluivert came off at halftime in Game Week 37, so if that happens once again, we could see Evan Nielsen on penalties, which just elevates him as a pick. Now, in terms of Kai Havertz, this is a really interesting one. Now, I'm going to put it out there. The only way I think you buy Kai Havertz is if you're waiting until the deadline and we get absolute clarity on an Arsenal team leak that says Havertz is starting, because I would expect Arteta to give minutes to Kai Havertz. Yes, he could have just brought him on in Game Week 37 to lock up that game, get the victory, and now he basically is saying to him, go off for summer and come back fit in pre-season. But I also expect him to get some minutes in this game, and I think it is a sort of Kai Havertz fixture. He's 6% owned. There's a massive risk of him being on the bench, but if you are able to be patient and a bit optimistic, if we get the news that Havertz is starting, I think that's an incredible differential. The problem is those minutes. Even if he starts, he could easily come off after 60, and then you're starting to ask yourself, a guy who plays 60 not on penalties, is he really worth it? Finally, Ollie Watkins. Now, this is going to be really boring, but Aston Villa are the definition of a team that have a must-win game. They have to beat their fixture against Man United, and it's a great fixture. Man United losing the Europa League final. Now, one argument would be that, well, they can't put in a bad performance at Old Trafford now off the back of a loss. It's just going to be absolute criminal for Amorim to chuck the game against Aston Villa. The fans are still paying for them at Old Trafford. It's probably going to make him more motivated than ever to say to them, you cannot put in a bad performance in this game. But on the flip side, even if Man United put in their best performance of the season, I still expect Aston Villa to beat them. Yes, Villa have been a little bit squeaky bum time in some of their fixtures. I don't think they're playing free-flowing football at all, especially since they've kind of changed to the Onana and Kamara double pivot in the absence of Tielemans. I don't think that creatively helps Aston Villa as a team. I think they're very much grinding out results right now, but I think regardless, if Villa win this game, Watkins is always evolved in some capacity, and if you're not already tripled up in Aston Villa, even though Villa are away against Man United, it's a fixture on paper that looks way worse than the other two. I actually think it could be the best of the bunch, to be honest with you. So right now, if I'm ranking these forwards, I still think Ollie Watkins is number one controversially. And I know it's very much the boring pick, but I think he is the one that I know is going to play 90 minutes in a highly motivated team against a terrible side in Man United. So Watkins will be number one, Evan Nielsen a close second, and then Kai Havertz number 3. I, for one, I'm tripled up on Villa, so I'm likely to bring in Evan Nielsen, but I do wish I had Ollie Watkins this game week. Finally, I wanted to talk about some game week 38 punts for those managers that are maybe trying to chase rank, chase their mini leagues, and are looking for somebody a bit outside of the box. And we got 3 players here. We got Danny Welbeck at 5.5 million and around 6% owned in the game. We've got Martinelli at 6.5 million and he's around 3% owned. And then we do have Luis Diaz at 7.5 million, slightly more owned at around 15%, but I believe in the live teams, it is much less, around 10% owned. So all 3 of these, I do believe, will help you in your mini leagues or chasing overall rank in general. And they all are kind of slightly alternative picks to some of the popular ones out there. So we've spoken about Arsenal's context with their game. We've kind of touched on Liverpool, but not a lot. And then we have not touched on Brighton. So first up, Danny Welbeck. Brighton still chasing some sort of European football if fixtures go their way, for example. And I do think against Spurs, this is a fantastic game. Bit different to the Man United game. Yes, Spurs have played the Europa League final, but they won it. And it is going to be feel-good factor. But I also think a few sore heads going into this final game, and we already know Spurs are decimated with injuries. It could be quite a fun game, this one. We know Ange doesn't put a low block unless it's a Europa League final, so I think Brighton will score a lot of goals in this game. The problem is, I can't really trust anybody in the midfield areas. We've seen Matoma in and out of the team, Adingra, we've seen Minter in and out. Welbeck's the only one that's really been a constant when he has been regularly fit, and also João Pedro, but difficult one to trust right now. 4 attacking returns in his last 7 league starts. I think Welbeck is a brilliant alternative to some of the other forwards out there like Kai Havertz, like Evan Nielsen. And I don't think people should be completely pushing Welbeck aside. 5.5 million, I think he is brilliant if people have enough transfers accumulated that can maybe go for a different pick. And Brighton always do well against these quote-unquote bigger teams. We saw that against Liverpool in game week 37. I think they'll fancy themselves here. Now, in terms of Martinelli, this is a complete alternative to Bukayo Saka. If you're seeing your mini league rival going for Saka, why not go for the other winger in Martinelli? Only 3% owned. He started his last 6 games. Yes, he hasn't been scored in all of them, but he has looked a bit more lively than what we saw in the first half of the season. And as we've spoken about, if Arsenal do play their best 11 against Southampton, you do want an attacker in that team because there is potential for 3-4 goals. When we do look at the fixtures out there, I think the Arsenal game is one that we wouldn't be surprised if the goals are flowing. And Martinelli, a difficult one to trust, and I wouldn't want to own him long term, but as a 1 game week punt, I really do like it. And when he does play for Arsenal, he plays quite significant minutes. The only downside is Kai Havertz being thrown in the hat. Could we see Trossard getting some minutes off the left? That is possible, and similarly, I would almost want to see an Arsenal team leak before investing in someone like Martinelli. And finally, we've got Luis Diaz. Now, this Liverpool game, nobody knows what's going to happen. They're at home, final home game of the season against the team that won the FA Cup. I'm expecting goals. I'm expecting Liverpool to go out and just be kind of on the beach, but also happy to put on a performance. And Crystal Palace just naturally have ballers that put on a performance regardless. And with the team that they selected in game week 37, I think they will play Mateta, they will play Eze, they will play Ismaila Sarr. So I think this could be quite an open game for Liverpool versus Crystal Palace. And also want to put it out there, maybe a differential thing to do is to keep your Palace players and play them against Liverpool. Because my big issue here and what I've put is, can we trust Liverpool? And I think the answer is no. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we did see a few goals from Liverpool, but then equally lose this game against Palace. Now, of course, if we're looking for a 1 game week punt, 3 goals in the last 4 starts for Luis Diaz is fantastic. And if I'm looking for goals in this Liverpool team outside of Mo Salah, then I think Diaz would be my pick. But again, do I know for certain he's starting, or could we possibly see a bit of a rotated team with Jota, Gakpo, even Darwin Núñez starting? If I had to bet, I probably would say Diaz does play this game. And he probably does well. But again, I will be a little bit cautious about some sort of rotation in that team. So in terms of these punts right now, I probably am going to put Luis Diaz number 1, just because I do think Crystal Palace off the back of the FA Cup, it's been a long season. I think Liverpool will get goals regardless. And I do think Diaz is good for them when he does start. I probably would then put Martinelli number 2, just because of the fixture, and Welbeck number 3. But honestly, guys, I love Welbeck as the pick, but I think the forwards available to us in Evan Nielsen and Watkins supersede Welbeck, whereas I think there's some great alternatives if you want to be different in the midfielders. Yes guys, okay, that is going to wrap up today's video looking at the best buys for game week 38. It's the final one of the season, so hopefully some of these deliver double-digit returns so you can win your mini leagues and of course have your best ever finish. Now we will be doing team selection video tomorrow. I'll be doing a final team decisions video on Saturday, and of course a long deadline live stream on Sunday. So it is never too late to subscribe to the channel. If you did enjoy this video, make sure you drop a like. Any questions, pop them in the comment section. I'll be sure to get to them. Importantly, have a great day. Take care. See you real soon. Cheers.